This podcast is made possible by the listener members of Nashville Public Radio.
This is the Nashvillager Podcast. I'm Tony Gonzalez in for Nina Cardona, and this is your daily digest of what's happening around Middle Tennessee from Nashville Public Radio, WPLN News. So how does this daily digest come together each morning? I'm going to peel back the curtain today because the Nashvillager is remarkable. It's an amazing testament to the work of the entire WPLN newsroom. And right now, this newsroom does need your help. This week is our annual Fall Fund Drive, where we ask listeners like you to take stock of the value you get from our nonprofit newsroom and to strengthen it with a donation. You could actually give right now while you're listening. The Give Now button cannot be missed on our homepage today. So, this podcast, I'm comfortable saying that it's unlike anything else in Nashville. Step back, Nina's usual on this day history lessons on their own are worth the price of admission. They're worth a contribution. Then there's the extended morning newscast, basically the most important 5 to 8 stories of the day for our region. And that's where you benefit from having dedicated beat reporters, like Catherine on health, Caroline on the environment, metro government, education, music, all of those roles on their own, and especially as a team, they deliver value every day. Plus, you get our hosts, reporters, editors, picking out the best couple of scoops or in-depth stories from across all of the newspapers, the online sites, the Associated Press, which is not a free service for WPLN, and the TV stations, picking from all of those and curated for you. Yeah, you're welcome. And then every episode, we also share one of our in-depth feature stories. That's usually 3 to 5 minutes on one topic. Today's, coming up in a few minutes, will be Metro reporter Cynthia Abrams answering listener questions about the Nashville transit referendum. So, you get that opening essay, the latest news, and deep insights all in under 20 minutes. We designed this to be efficient so that it fits in your routine. I'd love it if you were moved to donate for any one of the beats or services that I've listed here, and certainly for the awesome package that it is. I hope it's a daily snapshot of just how valuable Nashville Public Radio is to you and to your neighbors. You can choose your giving amount at WPLN.org/give. Coming up next is that extended newscast. Here's the mantra I think about at WPLN. We connect the dots. It captures a mindset that our journalism is not merely about the latest press release or proclamations by officials. Instead, we can develop expertise, dig deeper, and look to history to understand what's happening now. I'm Tony Gonzalez, news director. When I'm planning coverage and editing stories, the best part is being part of a team that's curious about our community and invested in its future. For WPLN News in Nashville, I'm Tony Gonzalez. The U.S. Supreme Court will hear a case from Tennessee this December that will determine if transgender kids will be able to access gender-affirming care. The lawsuit brought by a Nashville family and a Memphis physician argues that Tennessee's laws against treatment like hormone therapy or puberty blockers is discriminatory. In a brief to the High Court, Tennessee Attorney General Jonathan Skrmetti defended the law. Both parties will go before the Supreme Court the first week of December to make their case. A final ruling is not expected until next summer. Voters in Kentucky will soon decide if the state's constitution should be amended to include language prohibiting non-citizens from voting. Constitutional Amendment 1 follows a GOP effort to put the issue on the ballot in 8 states. Jacob Martin of member station WKYU in Kentucky reports.
Proponents of Amendment 1 say the state constitution needs to be more explicit that non-citizens are prohibited from voting, including in city and county elections. Kentucky election officials say there's been no instances of non-citizens voting in local or federal elections, and opponents of the amendment say election resources would be better served elsewhere. Here's former State Representative Attica Scott.
Our own Secretary of State has said that there have been no incidences of people who are not eligible to vote trying to vote in our elections. Why in the world would you have this on our ballot?
Non-citizens who register to vote in federal elections can face up to 5 years in prison or deportation. Experts say the likelihood of an undocumented person taking that risk is doubtful. I'm Jacob Martin in Bowling Green, Kentucky.
3 new charter schools in North Nashville now have the green light from the state after their applications were initially denied by the local school board. The Tennessee Public Charter School Commission voted unanimously to accept applications from an elementary school, a K-8 school, and a high school. It denied a 4th charter application, which would have taught middle and high school students. Governor Bill Lee established the State Commission, which has the power to overturn local school board decisions and oversee charter schools across the state. A man died on Broadway over the weekend after a driver turning left from 12th Avenue failed to yield to the pedestrian. 58-year-old Michael O'Connell of New Jersey had the walk light when he was struck by a pickup truck. The driver, 36-year-old Joey Nixon of Waverly, Tennessee, initially left the scene but returned a short time later. Witnesses say Nixon had been speeding and spinning the pickup truck's tires before the collision. The Country Music Hall of Fame held its medallion ceremony at CMA Theater last night. Most of the Hall of Fame's living members were on hand to honor 2 distinctive artists, John Anderson and the late Toby Keith, and influential guitarist James Burton. The tributes to the inductees were especially star-studded and spanned genres and generations. Bluegrass legends the Del McCoury Band did an acoustic rendition of an Anderson number. Post Malone, Eric Church, and Blake Shelton drew from Keith's catalog. And after Elvis Costello, Brad Paisley, Emmylou Harris, Rodney Crowell, and Vince Gill gave performances honoring Burton, the Rolling Stones' Keith Richards took to the stage to round out the tributes to the foundational guitarist. The bronze plaques for Burton, Anderson, and Keith will join those of the 152 previous inductees in the rotunda of the Country Music Hall of Fame and Museum. Flood relief efforts and what donations are most helpful are evolving in East Tennessee. Not needed, water, food, diapers, cleaning supplies, or used clothing. In need, especially as the weather changes, are generators, space heaters, and fuel. That's according to the Knoxville News-Sentinel, which spent a day shadowing the massive volunteer effort being run through the Bristol Motor Speedway. The racetrack has become a major distribution hub, packed with pallets of supplies kept under grandstands, in parking lots, and on the speedway itself. Water alone could fill an estimated 400 semi-truck loads. The hub includes a call center to coordinate relief supplies to 12 counties. That's also where volunteers are trying to debunk misinformation. They emphasize that it's local people, often backed by local companies, that will be leading the effort. You'll find more news anytime at WPLN.org. And now I'm going to turn it over to the conversation that first aired on the radio between host Nina Cardona and Metro reporter Cynthia Abrams.
Nashvillians face a consequential decision this election day, whether to vote for or against the transit referendum. This plan would increase the sales tax to fund a slate of major transportation projects. Before heading to the polls, WPLN wanted to make sure our listeners understood this plan and how it could affect them. So we asked you, what questions do you have about the referendum? And now, WPLN's Metro reporter Cynthia Abrams is back with the answers. Hi, Cynthia.
Hi.
What types of questions did you get from listeners?
All sorts, although we were able to categorize them into a few different groups. There was questions about cost, questions about who gets a say. These touch on processes, regional elements, opposition efforts. The most questions fell under technical details, which makes sense, given that the transit plan is 94 pages long. And finally, questions about specific scenarios, people wanting to know what would change for them in their neighborhoods or along their typical travel routes.
Okay, well, let's start at the top of that list and tick through some of the answers to those questions. One listener asked, does the ballot language capture the total cost of the transit projects?
That's a good question because there are a few numbers out there. When voters head to the polls, they can expect to see 2 cost figures on their ballot. $3.1 billion, which is the plan's total capital or construction cost over the course of 15 years, and $111 million, which represents the annual operating cost. These numbers are calculated in today's dollars, which is where the other figure comes in. The plan was required to undergo an independent financial audit, and that audit computed another number, the all-in costs of the transit plan. At $6.9 billion, this encapsulates construction costs, operating costs, interest payments, all while factoring in inflation over the next 15 years.
So if approved, those funds would be paid for in part by the sales tax surcharge, as well as what's estimated at $1 billion worth of federal funds. And another listener asked if part of that federal funding is based on a requirement that local zoning laws be changed. Is it?
No, which is the simple answer.
Okay, sounds like you could unpack that a little.
Yeah, so this is a claim that the leading opposition effort, a group called Committee Against an Unfair Tax, is making. They say that if the referendum is approved, it would be tied to NEST, a set of controversial zoning reform proposals introduced earlier this year. And the group is pointing to a White House initiative that benefits applicants pursuing zoning and land use reform in some federal funding streams. So the mayor's office and WeGo are pushing back on this assertion. Metro Finance and Metro Legal reviewed the claim and determined that of the 9 basic grants where those $1 billion of federal funding would come from, none would require zoning changes for Nashville to still be competitive.
All right, we've also got some questions about service. One listener asked if this plan includes light rail.
Quick answer, no. This plan includes bus rapid transit, a different form of high-capacity transit, but there would be no rail.
Okay, so what about the airport? Someone asked how service to the airport would change, and what's stopping those improvements from happening now?
Right now, bus service runs every 45 minutes through the 18 line, which is currently the only route that services the airport. So under the plan, the 18 would expand its hours and its frequency, and a new route would also be added. This would be off of the Murfreesboro Pike line, which is one of the routes that would see major frequency upgrades. Think service every 15 minutes or so. And there would also be a new line connecting the airport to Opry Mills. As far as why these changes are not happening now, well, WeGo's director, Steve Bland, says it comes down to funding, or lack thereof, which is really what a lot of this comes down to. It's why the city is pursuing this referendum in the first place. Nashville doesn't have a dedicated source of funding for its transit system, which the referendum is seeking to change.
Well, thank you, Cynthia.
Thank you.
Cynthia Abrams covers Metro for WPLN. You can find the rest of our answers, along with the rest of our coverage of the upcoming referendum, at WPLN.org/transit.
We do this roundup of Nashville news every weekday, so subscribe in your favorite podcasting app to make sure you never miss an episode. And if you like this, you'll probably enjoy the Nashvillager newsletter too. You'll get perspectives from more of my colleagues at Nashville Public Radio and links to the stories that we're following. You can sign up for those daily emails at WPLN.org/Nashvillager. While you're there, you can also donate to propel our fund drive. Thanks so much for listening.